The Discovery. The cargo freighter Meridian Dawn drifted through the Perseus Arm on what should have been a routine supply run. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair, reviewing shipping manifests while her crew handled the approach to Harmony Station. The station was home to 1.8 million colonists, mostly families who had left Earth 3 generations ago to build a new life among the stars. Elena had grown up hearing stories about Harmony Station. Her grandmother had helped design the agricultural systems that fed the colony. It was supposed to be humanity's success story, proof that humans could thrive anywhere in the galaxy if they worked together. The station floated ahead of them, a massive ring spinning slowly against the darkness of space. Its lights were on, and the solar collectors gleamed in the light of the nearby star. Everything looked normal from a distance, but something felt wrong. Elena's communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, had been trying to raise the station for 20 minutes. Standard procedure required clearance before docking, but nobody was answering. Marcus tried every frequency, every emergency channel, every backup system. Nothing came back except silence. Elena stood up and walked to the view screen. She had learned to trust her instincts during 15 years in space, and right now those instincts were screaming that something terrible had happened. She ordered the ship closer, telling her crew to prepare for emergency protocols. As they approached, the details became clearer. The docking bays were empty. No shuttles moved between the station sections. The windows of the residential quarters showed lights, but no movement. The Meridian Dawn locked onto an emergency docking port, and Elena led a team inside wearing full environmental suits. The airlock cycled normally, and the atmosphere readings showed breathable air at comfortable temperature and pressure. But when the inner door opened, the smell hit them even through their suit filters. It was the smell of death, sweet and rotting and unmistakable. They found the first bodies in the main corridor, a man and woman lying together, their arms around each other as if they had been trying to protect one another. Their skin was discolored, covered in dark lesions that Elena had never seen before. She had witnessed accidents in space, decompression incidents, radiation exposure, but this was different. This looked deliberate. Her team spread through the station, their suit cameras sending footage back to the ship. Every section told the same story. Bodies everywhere, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups, sometimes entire families huddled together. The schools were the worst. Elena forced herself to look at the footage from the primary education wing. Small bodies at desks in playgrounds and cafeterias. Children who would never grow up, never laugh again, never see Earth or any other world. By the time they completed the initial survey, they knew the truth. Everyone was dead. All 1.8 million colonists, not a single survivor, no signs of struggle, no damage to the station infrastructure, no indication of any defense or fight. Whatever had killed them had done so quickly and efficiently. Dr. Amara Singh arrived 3 days later with a full investigative team. She was a specialist in xenobiology and had studied alien pathogens for 20 years. She examined the bodies with clinical precision, taking samples, running tests, mapping the progression of whatever had killed these people. Elena watched her work and saw the doctor's hands shake when she thought nobody was looking. The preliminary results came back within a week. It was a biological weapon, something engineered specifically to target human DNA. The pathogen had been released through the station's air circulation system, killing everyone within hours. The victims had experienced seizures, organ failure, and finally respiratory collapse. The report said death would have been relatively quick, but Elena wondered if quick was the same as painless. The station's computer logs told them who was responsible. A Zarthian trade vessel had docked 8 days before the Meridian Dawn arrived. The Zarthians were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for their business acumen and aggressive expansion policies. They controlled 17 star systems and had been pressing for access to human trade routes for years. The logs showed the Zarthian ship had permission to dock and conduct standard trade negotiations. But the security footage revealed something else entirely. Zarthian soldiers in environmental suits had moved through the station, placing devices in the ventilation system. They had worked systematically, professionally, like this was something they had done before. Then they left, sealing the docking port behind them. One video fragment showed a Zarthian commander recording a message. The translation software rendered his words in flat mechanical English. This sector belongs to the Zarthian Empire by right of ancient claim. Humanity's expansion ends here. Consider this a lesson in respecting boundaries. Other colonies will follow if humans do not withdraw from disputed territories. Elena transmitted everything to Earth. The videos, the medical reports, the computer logs, all the evidence of what had happened at Harmony Station. She included her own report, trying to keep her voice steady as she described what she had seen. She ended with a simple statement. They murdered everyone. Men, women, children, babies. They killed them all to make a political point. The response from Earth was immediate. Ships carrying diplomats, investigators, and military observers converged on Harmony Station. The Galactic Council, the governing body that regulated interactions between 70 different species, sent their own teams. Representatives from a dozen alien civilizations walked through the silent corridors, examined the bodies, reviewed the evidence. Ambassador David Okonkwo arrived to represent humanity's interests. He was a tall man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. He had spent 30 years negotiating treaties, resolving disputes, finding peaceful solutions to complex problems. He believed in diplomacy, in the power of words and compromise to prevent violence. But as he walked through Harmony Station, stopping to look at the small bodies in the school, something inside him changed. He stood in a classroom where 15 children lay dead at their desks, their homework still displayed on screens, and he understood that some crimes were beyond diplomacy. The Galactic Council convened 2 weeks after the discovery. The Great Assembly Hall on the neutral station of Unity 1 filled with representatives from every member species. The Zarthian ambassador was there, a massive reptilian creature with golden scales and eyes like polished amber. He sat calmly, showing no concern despite the evidence against his people. The council president, a being from the luminary species that resembled a floating collection of light, called the session to order. The evidence was presented methodically. Video footage, medical reports, computer logs, testimony from investigators. Everything pointed to a deliberate act of genocide by the Zarthian Empire. Ambassador Okonkwo spoke for humanity. His voice was controlled, professional, but Elena could hear the rage beneath it. The Zarthian Empire murdered 1.8 million human civilians. They used biological weapons banned by every treaty this council has ever written. They killed children, babies, entire families. This was not a military action. This was genocide, pure and simple. We demand justice. The Zarthian ambassador rose to respond. His voice was deep and resonant, filling the chamber. The humans were warned repeatedly about their expansion into territories claimed by the Zarthian Empire. We have ancient rights to the Perseus Arm, documented and filed with this council decades ago. When warnings are ignored, actions must be taken to defend legitimate territorial claims. Okonkwo felt his composure crack. You're calling the murder of 1.8 million people a defensive action? They were civilians, families, children going to school. The Zarthian spread his clawed hands. Regrettable but necessary. Humans must learn that there are consequences for ignoring the claims of established powers. Perhaps this tragedy will teach restraint. The debate continued for hours. Some species condemned the Zarthians strongly, calling for immediate sanctions and prosecution of the military commanders responsible. Others spoke about the complexity of territorial disputes, the need to understand different cultural perspectives on conflict resolution, the importance of maintaining council unity. The luminary species suggested forming a committee to study the incident further. The Aquari proposed mediation sessions. The Crystalline Collective recommended economic penalties combined with a formal apology. Every species had an opinion, a suggestion, a way to handle this that involved paperwork and procedure rather than justice. Finally, the vote came. Economic sanctions, limited in scope to avoid disrupting galactic trade. A formal censure that would be recorded in council archives. The Zarthian Empire would pay reparations equivalent to what they spent on military operations in a single month. No criminal prosecutions, no removal from the council, no real consequences. Okonkwo sat in the human delegation section and watched democracy fail. He watched justice die in committee, saw 1.8 million deaths reduced to a line item in a budget proposal. When the vote was announced, he stood slowly. The Galactic Council has failed, he said quietly. His voice carried through the chamber anyway. You had a chance to show that civilization means something, that law protects the innocent, that justice exists. Instead, you chose politics over principle. You chose stability over righteousness. He looked at the Zarthian ambassador. You murdered our children and called it defensive action. He looked at the council president. And you let them get away with it. The council president's light flickered uncertainly. Ambassador Okonkwo, we understand your anger, but we must consider the broader political situation. A harsh punishment could destabilize the entire region. Okonkwo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then let me be clear about something. Humanity tried your way. We joined your council. We followed your rules. We believed in your system of law and order. You have shown us that it's all a lie. Civilization is just a word you use when it's convenient. He gathered his documents. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We no longer recognize your authority or your laws. You taught us that in this galaxy, power is the only currency that matters. Thank you for the lesson. We'll remember it. The chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassadors stood shouting questions and demands. The council president called for order, but Okonkwo was already walking out, and the human delegation followed him. Back on Earth, the news spread across every continent, every orbital habitat, every colony in human space. People watched the footage from Harmony Station. They saw the dead children in classrooms. They heard the Zarthian ambassador call it necessary. They watched the council vote to do essentially nothing. The anger was immediate and universal. Protests filled the streets of every major city. In Beijing, 10 million people marched in silence, each carrying a candle for the dead. In Lagos, crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding action. In New York, people stood in the rain holding signs that read "Never Again" and "Justice for Harmony." The United Earth Assembly met in emergency session. Representatives from every nation debated for 3 days straight. The question was simple but profound. What should humanity do? Some argued for restraint, for continued diplomatic pressure, for working within the system to achieve justice. Others demanded immediate military action, a strike against the Zarthian Empire to show that such crimes carried consequences. The debate was heated, passionate, with people on both sides believing they were right. In the end, they agreed to let humanity vote. A global referendum was scheduled. Every human citizen across 42 star systems would be asked a single question. Should humanity withdraw from the Galactic Council and pursue justice for Harmony Station by any means necessary? The vote took place on a Monday. From Earth to the furthest colonies, people made their choice. In cities and villages, on stations and ships, in homes and workplaces, humanity decided what kind of species they wanted to be. The results came in over 24 hours. When the final tallies were counted, the answer was clear. 96% voted yes. Humanity would leave civilization behind and show the galaxy what humans became when mercy ended. Secretary General Maria Okonkwo, David's sister, addressed the species from the United Earth headquarters in Geneva. She stood before cameras that would broadcast her words to billions of humans and countless aliens who were watching. For 70 years, we reached for the stars with open hands, she began. We came in peace. We traded fairly. We negotiated honestly. We followed every rule, respected every custom, honored every treaty. We did everything we could to be good members of the galactic community. Her voice hardened. The Zarthian Empire repaid us by murdering 1.8 million of our people. They killed our children and called it defensive action, and the Galactic Council gave them a slap on the wrist and called it justice. She paused, letting the words sink in. We are done asking. We are done begging. We are done pretending that civilization means anything to species who use it as a shield while committing atrocities. Humanity is leaving the Council, and we are going to show the Zarthians and anyone else watching what humans really are. We are not the peaceful prey species you thought we were. We chose peace because we believed in something better. But you taught us that in this galaxy only power matters. Very well, let us show you what human power looks like when we stop being civilized. Across human space, military bases that officially didn't exist suddenly came online. In the Kuiper Belt beyond Neptune, massive shipyards uncloaked. They had been there for 30 years, hidden in plain sight, disguised as mining operations and research stations. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility since first contact, hoping they would never need it but building the capability just in case. Ships began emerging from those hidden yards, not the clean, friendly vessels that humans showed the galaxy. These were different. Dark hulls covered in stealth materials, Weapons that violated half a dozen Council treaties. Engines that burned hotter and faster than anything the Council thought humans possessed. Over 300 warships appeared in the first week, with more being completed every day. Admiral Zhang Wei stood in the command center of Mjolnir Station, watching the fleet assemble. He was 70 years old, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion and the Titan mining wars, conflicts that happened before humanity reached the stars. He understood war in a way that younger officers didn't. He knew that war wasn't about honor or glory. It was about making the enemy stop by any means necessary. His tactical officer approached. "Admiral, all fleet groups are reporting ready status. We have 312 ships operational, with another 200 completing final trials." Zhang studied the tactical display, fleet positions, target lists, supply routes, everything he needed to prosecute a war, and the special weapons from Project Ragnarok, ready for deployment on your order, sir. The testing was successful. The Council has no defense against them. Zhang nodded slowly. He had seen the test footage. Weapons that could phase through shields, missiles that traveled at relativistic speeds, AI-guided systems that could track and destroy targets with terrifying precision. Humanity had been busy while playing the role of peaceful newcomers. "Execute Operation First Strike," he ordered. "Show the Zarthians what they started. Let's make them remember Harmony Station." The human fleet divided into strike groups and vanished into the darkness between stars. They moved silently, using stealth technology that made them invisible to standard sensors. The Zarthians had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, human ships appeared simultaneously at 15 different locations throughout Zarthian space. Not at military bases or fleet concentrations, at infrastructure targets, shipyards, communication relays, orbital factories, logistics hubs, the places that made civilization possible. Admiral Zhang watched from Mjolnir Station as reports came in. Each strike group broadcast the same message before attacking. "This is for Harmony Station. This is for 1.8 million dead. This is to teach you that genocide has consequences." Then they opened fire, quantum torpedoes that phased through shields and detonated inside targets. Kinetic missiles accelerated to incredible speeds. Precision strikes that crippled infrastructure without causing civilian casualties. The Zarthians scrambled to respond, but human ships were already gone, vanishing back into the darkness. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer playing by Council rules. The war had begun, and it would not be a civilized conflict. It would be something older, something primal, something that reminded the galaxy why humans had survived every challenge Earth had thrown at them for millions of years. The age of human mercy had ended. Now the Zarthians and everyone watching would learn what happened when you pushed peaceful people too far. They would learn that humans who stopped being civilized became something far more dangerous. They would learn that some species survived not because they were strong, but because they knew when to stop being kind, and they would learn it the hard way. The Reckoning. The Zarthian High Command gathered in their fortress on the capital world of Zarthos Prime. General Vrask, Supreme Military Commander, stood before the tactical display showing red indicators across 15 systems. Each red marker represented a destroyed facility, a crippled shipyard, a communications hub reduced to debris. In 3 days, humanity had struck harder than any enemy in Zarthian history. Vrask was a veteran of 30 campaigns. His scales bore scars from a dozen wars, and his reputation for ruthlessness had made him legendary among his people. But as he studied the display, something unfamiliar gnawed at him. The humans weren't fighting like the Council species he knew. They weren't following the accepted rules of warfare. They were fighting like something else entirely. "How many casualties?" he demanded. His subordinate, Commander Thex, checked the reports with trembling claws. "Military casualties are estimated at 12,000 across all targets. Infrastructure damage is catastrophic. 3 major shipyards destroyed. 7 communication networks offline. Orbital manufacturing capability reduced by 40%. And civilian casualties? None reported, sir. The humans specifically avoided civilian targets. They broadcast warnings and allowed evacuation time." Vrask's eyes narrowed. That made no sense. The humans had every reason to slaughter Zarthian civilians after what happened at Harmony Station. Why show restraint? Unless it was strategic, unless they wanted to send a different message. "They're making a point," he said slowly. They're showing us they could kill our civilians but choose not to. They want us to understand the difference between what they're doing and what we did. What do we do, General? We mobilize the fleet. Full military response. If they want war, we'll give them war. We are Zarthian. We do not submit to inferior species. But even as Vrask gave the orders, part of him wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. The humans had revealed military capabilities that Council intelligence had completely missed. What else were they hiding? Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council met an emergency session for the 5th time in 2 weeks. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, offering solutions, pointing fingers. The luminary president struggled to maintain order. The humans must be stopped, the Aquari ambassador declared. They're violating every treaty, every law. This is barbarism. The crystalline collective representative chimed in agreement. We cannot allow this precedent. If species can simply ignore council authority when displeased, the entire galactic order will collapse. Ambassador Tyrell from the Viridian Union stood, his 6 arms raised for attention. Perhaps the humans have a point. The Zarthians committed genocide and received essentially no punishment. What message does that send? That powerful species can murder with impunity? The Zarthians started this war. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species sympathized with humanity's position. Others worried about the breakdown of galactic law. A few quietly admired the humans for having the courage to act when the council failed. The debate continued for hours, accomplishing nothing. Meanwhile, the human fleet was moving. Commander Kenji Tanaka led Strike Group 7 through uncharted space between star systems. His ship, the Valkyrie, was a stealth destroyer, equipped with experimental weapons that officially didn't exist. Around him, 15 other vessels moved in perfect coordination, their hulls absorbing sensor waves and leaving no trace. Kenji was 42 years old and had spent his entire adult life in the military. He had joined believing in peace and humanity's mission to explore and cooperate with other species. Harmony Station had changed that. He had lost a cousin there, a teacher named Yuki who had dedicated her life to educating children. She had died at her desk trying to comfort her students as the bioweapon took effect. Target in range, Commander, his tactical officer reported. Zarthian supply convoy, 6 freighters with destroyer escort. Kenji studied the display. The convoy was carrying military supplies to forward bases, ammunition and equipment that would be used against human forces. By council rules, it was a legitimate target. By human conscience, it was more complicated. Open a channel, he ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies. The communication officer complied, and Kenji activated the recording system. Zarthian vessels, this is Commander Tanaka of the United Earth Forces. You are carrying military supplies in a war zone. We are going to destroy your cargo. You have 10 minutes to abandon ship and retreat in your escape pods. We will not fire on escape pods or unarmed personnel. The Zarthian commander's face appeared on screen. Reptilian features twisted in contempt. Humans do not give orders to Zarthian military. We will not abandon our duty. Kenji kept his voice level. Then you'll die for your duty. But your crew doesn't have to. Give them the choice. The channel cut off. For 8 minutes, nothing happened. Then escape pods began launching from 4 of the 6 freighters. The 2 destroyers and 2 freighters remained at battle stations, their weapons powering up. They chose honor over survival, Kenji's tactical officer observed. Their choice, Kenji replied. Fire when ready. The human ships decloaked simultaneously, surrounding the convoy. Quantum torpedoes struck the destroyers before they could react, phasing through shields and detonating inside the hulls. The freighters tried to run, but kinetic missiles moving at relativistic speeds caught them within seconds. In less than a minute, the fight was over. Kenji watched the escape pods drift away. His ships could destroy them easily. Nobody would know, but that wasn't who humans were even now. Transmit coordinates to the nearest Zarthian base. Tell them where to find their survivors. Then we leave. Similar scenes played out across Zarthian space. Human strike groups appeared without warning, delivered their message, destroyed military targets, and vanished. They offered chances to surrender. They spared those who didn't fight. But anyone who raised weapons against them died quickly and efficiently. The Zarthians were learning a hard lesson. Humanity wasn't seeking conquest or territory. They were teaching through pain, showing the cost of starting wars against species who preferred peace but excelled at violence when necessary. On Zarthos Prime, General Vrask faced a difficult reality. His military was being dismantled piece by piece. Supply lines were cut. Forward bases were isolated. Communication between fleet groups was sporadic at best, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. "We need to escalate," his chief tactical advisor suggested. "Use weapons that will make them reconsider." "Bioweapons?" Vrask asked. "Like we used on Harmony Station." The advisor's scales flushed darker. "If necessary. We cannot win a conventional war against an enemy we cannot find. But if we strike their colonies with overwhelming force, they will have to negotiate." Vrask considered the option. It went against every strategic instinct he had. Escalation against an enemy who had shown restraint was dangerous. But pride demanded action. The Zarthian Empire could not appear weak. He made his decision, one he would regret for the rest of his life. Prepare a strike against the human colony at New Avalon. Use conventional weapons only, no bioagents. Overwhelming force to compel surrender. Show them that we can hurt them too. The attack came 3 days later. Zarthian ships appeared in orbit around New Avalon, a colony of 15,000 people living on a terraformed moon. The commander broadcast a warning. "Evacuate or be destroyed. You have 6 hours." The colonists scrambled to emergency shelters and evacuation ships. Most made it to safety, but not all. When the Zarthian bombardment began, 2,000 people were still on the surface. They died as orbital strikes turned the settlement into ruins. Admiral Zhang Wei received the report in his command center on Mjolnir Station. He stood motionless for a long moment, staring at casualty figures on his screen. 2,000 dead, not the 1.8 million of Harmony Station, but still 2,000 human lives ended by Zarthian weapons. "They crossed the line again," his executive officer said quietly. "They attacked civilians," Zhang nodded slowly. He had hoped the Zarthians would see reason, would understand that humanity was offering them a chance to end this without complete destruction, but they had chosen to escalate instead. "So be it," he said. "Execute Protocol Ragnarok. Full deployment. No more restraint." Across human space, orders went out to every fleet, every strike group, every ship equipped with humanity's most advanced weapons. The kid gloves were coming off. The Zarthians wanted to see what humans could do when truly angry. They were about to find out. Dr. Sarah Kim sat in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Luna. She had spent 15 years developing the weapon system in front of her, hoping humanity would never need to use it. The Reaper Swarm, they called it. Millions of microscopic drones, each equipped with quantum processors and adaptive learning algorithms. Released into enemy space, they would seek out ships, stations, anything with an energy signature. Then they would dismantle it molecule by molecule. The weapon was horrifying in its efficiency. It didn't explode or burn. It simply took things apart at the atomic level, reducing ships to clouds of constituent elements. And once released, the swarm could replicate itself, growing exponentially as it consumed more material. Sarah had argued against deploying it. The Reaper Swarm violated every ethical principle she believed in. But after New Avalon, after seeing the footage of families killed in their homes, her objections had faded. Sometimes survival mattered more than ethics. The containers were loaded onto specially equipped ships and dispatched to Zarthian space. The crews knew what they carried. None of them felt good about it, but they had all lost someone at Harmony Station or New Avalon. Personal grief made terrible decisions easier to accept. The first swarm was released near a Zarthian military base in the Outer Rim. The microscopic drones spread out, invisible to sensors, seeking targets. They found a battleship in orbit and went to work. The crew never knew what was happening. Their ship simply began to disintegrate, hull plating turning to dust, internal systems failing, everything breaking down at the molecular level. The battleship died silently, its crew abandoning ship as entire sections simply ceased to exist. The swarm moved on to the next target and the next, growing larger with each ship it consumed. Within a week, 12 Zarthian military vessels had been reduced to atomic clouds. The Zarthian High Command watched in horror as their ships disappeared without apparent cause. Their scientists couldn't explain it. Their military couldn't stop it. Fear spread through their ranks, the ancient primal fear of something incomprehensible and unstoppable. General Vrask called an emergency meeting. His officers gathered, all of them showing signs of stress. Scales had lost their luster. Eyes darted nervously. The confidence that had driven them to start this war was gone, replaced by mounting dread. "We cannot fight this," his chief scientist reported. "Whatever the humans are using, it operates on a level we don't understand. Our ships are being dismantled at the atomic level. We have no defense. How do we stop it?" "We don't. Not with current technology. The only option is to surrender and hope the humans will cease hostilities." Brask felt his world collapsing. The mighty Zarthian Empire, brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as weak newcomers. Pride demanded they fight on. Survival demanded they submit. "Prepare a communication to the human command," he said finally. "Offer unconditional surrender. Request immediate ceasefire." But even as he gave the order, another report came in. A Zarthian colony at Zeth 7 had been attacked. Not by the Reaper swarm, but by conventional human forces. They had destroyed the military garrison and then done something unexpected. They had landed troops. Admiral Zhang Wei authorized the deployment personally. After New Avalon, something had shifted in human strategy. It wasn't enough to destroy Zarthian military capabilities. The war criminals responsible for Harmony Station needed to face justice. Human justice, since the Galactic Council had failed to provide it. Major Lisa Rodriguez led the assault on Zeth 7. Her regiment of 2,000 soldiers dropped from orbit in stealth pods, landing near the colonial government complex. They moved through the streets with practiced efficiency, securing strategic points and rounding up government officials. The Zarthian colonial administrator, an official named Kresh, was pulled from his office at gunpoint. He hissed and struggled, but human soldiers were armored and armed with weapons that made resistance futile. "What is the meaning of this?" "This is a violation of every law." "Laws," Major Rodriguez said coldly. "You want to talk about laws? Let me show you something." She pulled up footage on her portable display. Harmony Station. Dead humans in neat rows. Children in classrooms. Families who would never wake up. "This is what your empire did. This is the law they followed." Kresh stared at the images, his scales paling. "I had nothing to do with that. I'm just a colonial administrator. You represent the government that committed genocide. You're coming with us to face trial. Real trial with real consequences, not the joke your council provided." Over the next 2 weeks, human forces conducted similar operations across Zarthian space. They targeted government officials, military commanders, anyone connected to the decision to attack Harmony Station. The raids were surgical and precise. Civilian casualties were avoided. Only those responsible for starting the war were taken. The captured Zarthians were transported to a human facility on Titan. There, in a courtroom built specifically for this purpose, they would face justice. Human prosecutors had spent months building cases, gathering evidence, documenting the chain of command that led to genocide. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. The Galactic Council objected, calling it illegal and unauthorized. But millions of beings from hundreds of species watched anyway. They saw evidence presented methodically. They heard testimony from survivors who had escaped Harmony Station before the attack. They watched as Zarthian officials tried to justify genocide as defensive action. And they watched as human judges representing every continent on Earth delivered verdicts. Guilty of genocide. Guilty of crimes against sentient life. Guilty of war crimes. The sentences were life imprisonment on a prison station, built far from any inhabited system. No parole, no appeals, no mercy. General Vrask watched the trials from his command center on Zarthos Prime. He saw subordinates he had known for decades convicted and sentenced. He saw the Empire's reputation destroyed before the eyes of the galaxy, and he understood that humanity had won far more than a military victory. They had won the moral high ground. The formal surrender came 6 weeks after the war began. The Zarthian High Council, what remained of it after human raids, transmitted their capitulation to Admiral Zhang Wei. The terms were harsh but not genocidal. The Zarthian military would be reduced to defensive forces only. War criminals would face human justice. Reparations would be paid to the families of Harmony Station victims. And Zarthian territory would be monitored by human forces for 50 years. Zhang Wei read the surrender document and felt no satisfaction. Victory tasted like ashes. 2,000 humans had died at New Avalon. Thousands more Zarthians had died in the fighting. Yes, justice had been served. Yes, the war criminals would face consequences. But the dead were still dead, and nothing would bring them back. On Earth, crowds gathered to watch the surrender ceremony. There was no celebration, no cheering in the streets. People stood in silence, remembering the dead. Harmony Station, New Avalon, all the lives lost because one species decided genocide was acceptable. Secretary General Maria Okonkwo addressed humanity one final time. "We won this war," she said. "We proved that attacking humans carries consequences. We showed the galaxy that we're not weak, not prey, not victims." But as she spoke, her voice carried sadness rather than triumph. "We also learned something about ourselves. We learned that when pushed far enough, we can be just as brutal as any species in this galaxy. We can kill efficiently. We can wage war without mercy. We can set aside our principles when survival demands it." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "The question now is, what do we do with that knowledge? Do we stay as we've become, hard and ruthless and feared? Or do we find our way back to who we wanted to be? I don't have the answer. Maybe there isn't one answer. Maybe we're both things now, peaceful and dangerous, civilized and savage." She took a breath. "What I do know is this. We will never again let genocide go unpunished. We will never again trust the Galactic Council to protect us. We will maintain our military, our weapons, our ability to strike back. But we will also remember why we built all of this. Not for conquest, not for empire, but to protect human lives. To make sure that what happened at Harmony Station never happens again." The speech ended, but the debates had only begun. Across human space, people argued about what humanity had become. Some believed the show of force was necessary and appropriate. Others worried that humans had compromised their values, had become the very thing they fought against. There were no easy answers. In the years that followed, humanity remained withdrawn from the Galactic Council. They maintained their military strength, kept their hidden shipyards operational, and watched Zarthian space carefully. But they also resumed peaceful trade with species who respected them. They returned to exploration and scientific cooperation. They tried to balance both sides of their nature. The Reaper swarm was never deployed again. After the war, Dr. Sarah Kim and her team destroyed all remaining samples and wiped the research data. Some weapons, they decided, were too terrible to keep even for defensive purposes. Humanity would defend itself, but not with weapons of complete annihilation. The Galactic Council eventually reformed, implementing new protocols for prosecuting genocide and war crimes. The changes came too late for Harmony Station, but they might prevent future atrocities. Some species invited humanity to return to the Council. The invitation remained open, neither accepted nor rejected. Humanity was content to watch from outside, cooperating when beneficial but never again trusting their survival to others. Commander Kenji Tanaka retired after the war. He returned to Earth and took a teaching position at the Naval Academy. He taught strategy and tactics, but also ethics and the cost of war. His students needed to understand both how to fight and why fighting should be the last resort. Captain Elena Vasquez continued running supply missions, but she never forgot what she had seen at Harmony Station. She made sure every crew member she trained understood why vigilance mattered, why humanity could never again assume peaceful intentions from others. And on Harmony Station itself, now a memorial rather than a colony, visitors came from across human space. They walked the silent corridors and read the names of the dead. They remembered what had been lost and what had been learned. The station served as a reminder of humanity's greatest tragedy, and its transformation from peaceful explorers to beings who understood that civilization was a choice that had to be defended. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. Humans were peaceful by preference, not by necessity. They chose civilization, chose cooperation, chose diplomacy, but pushed them too far, harm their children, commit genocide against them, and they would stop being civilized. And when humans stopped being civilized, they became unforgettable. The age of human mercy had ended at Harmony Station. What emerged was something more complex, more dangerous, and ultimately more survivable. Humanity had learned to be both the dove and the hawk, peaceful until peace became impossible, then savage until survival was secured. They were no longer the innocent newcomers reaching for the stars with open hands. They were survivors, warriors, and protectors who understood that in a dangerous galaxy, strength and mercy had to coexist. The balance between those two natures would define humanity's future among the stars, and every species watching knew that humanity's answer to genocide would always be the same. Mercy ends here, justice begins now. And the consequences would be unforgettable.